Monaco, the home of the rich and the famous. Monte Carlo has a famous F1 race where the Principality comes alive, but it also is home to one of France's most successful football clubs. 8 Ligue 1 titles, 5 Coupe de France's, former players such as Henry, Falcao and Mbappe. Sadly though, unable to compete with PSG financially, the club lost its brightest asset. It's time to step out of the shadows as we take on 5 seasons at Monaco. Welcome to Monaco, the Principality that is the home of the rich and the famous, and is also the home of one of France's most successful football clubs, despite not actually being in France. You join me on day 1 of the job at AS Monaco. We're going to spend 5 seasons in charge at Monaco and see what success we can bring to the club as we look to try and catch and overtake PSG in French football. Starting off on the information page, we can see that the media predict us to finish in 3rd place in the first season. They were founded in 1924 and have fierce rivals which are Nice. Looking at the club history, they have won 8 Ligue 1 titles and 5 Coupe de France's. Let's go forward and check out the starting 11 that we will inherit at the start of the game. Now, this tactic looks a little bit crazy. It's basically a 5-2-3, and it's a tactic that we're going to try and take on in the first season, certainly, and we're going to run with it as long as we can. However, I do feel that this tactic is slightly crazy in terms of some of the positions that we're going to need. But if we look at the starting 11, it actually is a decent squad on paper. So they've got Cone in goal, you've got Caio Henrique, Salisu, Maripan, Matsima and Vanderson as a back 5, Zakaria and Fofana as the middle 2. Then you've got Golovin, Minamino and Ben Yedder up top. If we have a little look at some of the players, we have Ben Yedder, obviously one of the most famous players at the club. He's a striker, 32 years old. Pretty much going to be leaning on him in the first season. Contract does run out at the end of the season though, so if we can't afford to give him those £130,000 a week, there is a chance we could lose him in the first season. Then on to the Russian, Golovin. He's an attacking midfielder or can play on the left. He's one of those players that once again we will be leaning on early on in the save, and I think he's a linchpin of the club. Then former Liverpool player Takumi Minamino. He's another one that can play through the centre or can play from the left. He's dependable and reliable, 28 years old. In the middle we have Zakaria, former player I believe of Chelsea and Juventus. He's decent enough and one that at £20 to £22 million, if there was an offer to come in, I have to admit I would consider taking it. Long term, at the age of 26, there are a few players in the middle of the park that I would like to go and sign that are a little bit younger. Next to him is Fofana, 24 years old, plays as a defensive midfielder or a central midfielder. And then you've got the Brazilian Caio Henrique at left back and another Brazilian, Vanderson, at right back. We have former Southampton player Mohamed Salisu as a centre back. We have Maripan alongside him, the Chilean. And to round off the back 3 is Matsima. In goal, we have Philip Cone, so a player that I think is reliable. Swiss player valued at £12.5 to £13.5 million. So we'll probably not need to look at goalkeeper in the first season, but certainly going forwards, this squad does seem to have a lot of ageing players, although they do have a very good youth system. The other thing to note is going forwards, even though I will try and use this tactic, there'll be no transfers in the first transfer window. Let's go forwards and see what is expected of us from the club board. So the board culture is sign players under the age of 22 for the future. Just noted that they do have quite an ageing squad, so that is one thing we will look to check off pretty quickly. They want to sign players to sell for a profit, sign young players to develop for a profit, and work within the wage budget. So all 3 of those should be pretty easy. In terms of the end of the current season, qualify for the Champions League, reach the latter stages of the Coupe de France, become the most recognised as the best of the rest, and then contract renewal, continue to be recognised as best of the rest going forward. I think we can do a little bit better than best of the rest. I really do think we have a good shot of breaking certainly into the top 6, if not the top 4. Let's have a look then at what the club vision and the supporter culture is. So develop players using the club's youth system, as I did say when we was looking at that first team 11, they do have a good youth system at Monaco and have that history of bringing players through. They want to become recognised as the best of the rest, and they want to finish above Nice in the league. So we know what is expected of us from the supporters and the board. We've seen the starting 11 and the tactic we'll be using. Let's see how we get on in Season 1. To kick off Season 1's review, we're going to start off with the transfers and show you everything that's happened in the transfer market. And as I mentioned in the little intro there, we had no transfers in the first transfer window. We only did our business in January in Season 1. So all of these transfers you're about to see would have happened in the winter transfer window. So by the time we got to the transfer window, it became very apparent very quickly that Monaco actually aren't as rich and as famous as we thought they were. They obviously are a famous football club, but the money was in short supply, so it meant that I had to start selling players before I could start to rebuild this team. So the first player that left the club was Vanderson. We managed to get £18 million for him. He has gone back to Brazil to play for Flamengo. The next player to leave was Myron Boadu. He's a player that long term I actually would have liked to have kept, but a bid came in from Corinthians for £10 million. I thought that was a decent amount of money and we decided to move him on. And the final player to leave in Season 1 was Denis Zakaria. You may have heard me mention just that if a bid came in, we would look at it. Real Sociedad offered us £30 million for him, and we decided that was exactly what we were looking for and would give us the right amount of money to not only strengthen the squad in this season, but going forward. The other thing, if you remember, was that the board and the supporters wanted us to start signing younger players and phasing out some of the older players. And the first transfer that we brought in was Goncalo Souza. He is a 17-year-old striker, play off of the right wing, and he has come from Porto. Now you're going to notice a little bit of a theme going on here. In this first season, we decided to raid some of the best Portuguese talent that we could. So the next player to come in was Dario Esugo. He's possibly one of my favourite wonder kids in this game. I've signed him for the past couple of years, and once again I've gone out and splashed the cash to buy him. The next player to come in was Daniel Bragança. He's one that I've signed in previous football managers as well. He's dependable and reliable in the middle of the park, and even though he might not be a first teamer, he'll definitely be reliable when he's called upon, even if it's just as a rotation piece. The next player to come in is João Rego. He is a wonder kid who can play off of either side of the pitch, left wing, right wing, through the centre, can also cover as a striker. We only had to pay something like £8 million for him, and instantly his value has skyrocketed, and he has had a bit of a bedding in season, but he's certainly one that looks positive for the future. The final player to come in Season 1 was to replace Vanderson. He's a Brazilian, he's Weverton, and he has come from Ponte Preta. Only had to pay around £1 million for him, so it's an absolute bargain. We already have one or two right backs, but with selling Vanderson, it left us a little bit short at right back, so he was the replacement that we decided to go out and buy. So those are the players that have left quite a big hole. We then started to build the team. Can those players have the impact we were looking for in Season 1? In the first season, Monaco would have the benefit of not having to play in a lot of tournaments. In fact, we only played in 2 competitions, the first of which was the Coupe de France. Now, if you remember, they wanted us to be competitive in this. We joined in the 9th round, where we would beat Nancy 2-0. In the 10th round, we would be paired up with Dunkirk. We would go on and beat them 4-1. In the 11th round, we would play against Lille. We absolutely demolished them, beating them 5-0. To go through to the quarterfinals, where we played Montpellier, we beat them 3-2. Then on to the semi-finals, where we would play against Lens. We beat them 3-1. And finally into the final, where we would play against PSG, and sadly we would lose 3-0. Have a little look at that final just to show you how it went. Nothing really went our way, and we were completely outplayed. No real problems with that one. So that meant the only other competition that we would play in Season 1 was Ligue 1, and we would finish the season in 3rd place, qualifying for the Champions League. So our season campaign would finish with 34 games played, 21 wins, 8 draws, 5 losses, a goal difference of 40, and we finished on 71 points. Now, to put that into perspective, we would finish 22 points behind PSG, who were champions. So certainly in the first season, that is the gap we are looking to bridge. But we did also finish 4 points behind Lens, but we did finish 6 points ahead of Nice, which was quite good for us. So our first season qualifying for the Champions League is definitely a positive step forwards. Looking at some of the player stats, we didn't have a standout goal scorer. In the average ratings, we didn't have a player in the top 3 there either. Caio Henrique did get 12 assists. He also got 6th player in the match awards, so a decent season for him. So, to round up the competitions then, we finished as runners-up in the Coupe de France, and we also would go on and qualify for the Champions League, finishing 3rd in the Ligue 1. A look at the finances then as we head into Season 2 shows that the actual club finances are pretty poor. They have an overall balance of minus £5 million, but they do give us a transfer budget of £15.6 million. So once again, we're going to get into that whole debate of whether we should spend the £15.6 million and not think of the consequence, or if we just be a bit more reserved, try and raise some more funds and then spend whatever's available. In terms of the wage budget, quite generous with £880,000, and we're only spending £767,000. If we go to the club vision and have a look at how we're getting on in terms of the board and the supporters, our job security is secure. Our actionable objectives are to work within the wage budget. We're on course. Maximum 1-year contracts for over 32s, maximum 2-year contracts now for over 30s, minimum 4-year contracts for first team players. By the end of the season, they want to be competitive in the Champions League and qualify for the Europa League at a minimum. Looking at the feedback, we get a B- from the board. They say they are pleased with the management of the team and last season's successes remain fresh in the memories and factor into that appraisal. Looking at the board cultures, sign players under the age of 23 for the first team. They're reserving judgment. Notable highlights: pleased with the 3-1 win against Lyon, pleased with the 4-0 dismantling of Lille, and they are pleased with the positive atmosphere in the changing room, but they are disappointed about the Coupe de France final as we lost to PSG. Looking at the supporters then, we get a B- from the supporters. Develop players using the club's youth system, finish above Nice in the league, so we are doing both of those. Pleased with the 4-0 win against Lille, pleased with the 3-1 victory against Lyon, and 4-1 victory against Montpellier. And once again, the supporters were disappointed with the cup final against PSG. Still though, first season to get B's is a very good score, and I think that it's good feedback going into Season 2. To round out the first season, we are going to have a look at the first team squad. Now, I'm going to do this in 2 different ways. Firstly, I'm going to show you the best 11 that I think I have going into Season 2. We will then go and look at the assistant's best 11, and we'll also have a look at his report to see if there's any gaps and any weaknesses that we need to fill. So to kick things off with my best 11, I would go with Cone in goal, Salisu, Matsima and Maripan as the back 3, Caio Henrique on the left, Singo on the right, then Asugo and Fofana as my midfield 2, Golovin on the left, Rigo on the right and Ben Yedder at the top of the pitch. I think they've been absolutely sound in terms of the way that we are set up. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of the tactic, but it does seem to have done them well. Looking at Wissam Ben Yedder, I did allude to it at the start of the episode. He has turned us down and he's going to go and join Marseille on the 1st of July. So disappointed that we couldn't retain him. But in terms of his season, he did actually do okay, despite the fact he sulked a little bit because he couldn't get his contract before eventually deciding to leave. He had 34 appearances with 14 goals and 3 assists. Looking at Joe Rago, he came into the team and, like I said, it was kind of a bedding in period for him. He played in 12 games, scored 3 goals, and overall he played 11 with 4 more substitute appearances and got 7 goals in the first season. Golovin, playing from the left, had a very good season. He played 32 times, scoring 9 goals, had 8 assists, and overall he played 36 and scored 10 goals. He has played in a number of positions. We either play him here on the wide left, or he can play in one of these 2 slots as either a midfielder or or a defensive midfielder, Segundo Volante does seem to suit him a bit more than this position here. He's probably not a natural at it, but we still like to get him into those positions when we can. And then Dario Asugo, as I said, one of my favourite wonder kids, paid £4.9 million for him. I think we bought him in January, so he only played 11 games. He scored 2 goals. Overall, he played 13 and scored those 2 goals. And he's developing nicely into the type of footballer that I really think that defensive midfielder is built around. 5'11", strong player with good passing, can break up plays and wreck games for the opposition. As I said, we did stick with the tactic. It's not my favourite one. It might have to change going forwards, but we'll certainly have stuck it out the first season. We'll see where we go with that. The other thing to do then is go into the squad planner and see what our assistant's best 11 is. So our assistant manager is Mr. Jaap Stam. Might have heard of him. He would go with goalkeeper Cone, then Maripan, Matsima and Salisu. Same 3, just different order. Caio Henrique, Fofana, Kamara and Singo. So he wants to go with the experience rather than trying to throw in Asugo. Then he has Minamino wide left, Mbolo wide right and Balogun up top. Now, Bril Mbolo started the season injured. He then got re-injured, so he hasn't really played much football, haven't really given him too many chances. And Balogun was complaining early on that he wasn't getting into the team, so he's another one that I think, if the right kind of offer come along, I really would seriously consider taking it. And then we've got Giancarlo Souza in behind him. We've got Rego on the left, Sugo also in those purple players. So we know we're going in the right direction in terms of the youth. Looking at our assistant report then, so some of the strengths: low level of eccentricity in the goalkeepers. Player partnership between Ben Yedder and Mbolo has been good. Player partnership between Golovin and Mbolo has been good. There are a number of youth prospects, so there is a whole list of players there. They really do have a good youth system at Monaco. Then the other things are rushing out tendency and best player form, which is Caio Henrique, which I don't think you can see right at the bottom of the page. There are a few others, but we won't go into too many of them. The biggest weaknesses are heading, communication, stamina, defensive depth, overall depth, long shots, penalties, kicking, positioning and teamwork. So a few of them. Defensive depth we're going to look at possibly in season 2, depending on what happens with that money in the transfers. And then overall depth, we're going to need to start packing the squad out as best we can. So that's pretty much a roundup of how season 1 has gone. I think it's been a successful season in terms of qualifying for the Champions League. We got close to winning the Coupe de France, but just were no match for PSG in that either. So a long way to go, a big bridge to PSG, but I do think it's a task that we can get on with in season number 2. Right then, if you're still with me at this point of the video, firstly, a big thank you. Secondly, if you could hit the like and subscribe to the channel, I really would appreciate it. I cannot thank you all enough for all the support you've given the channel across the past couple of months. Before you go, don't forget to check out the rest of the channel. There are other Let's Play videos. There are Wonder Kids, hints, tips, tutorials, a bit of something for everybody on the channel. But for this one, I'm going to leave it there. Big thank you for watching. See you on another video very soon.